Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This message is for October 13th, 2024. You can listen to it anytime you want. And this is for Exodus chapter 3, verses 1 through 6 and verse 14. And it is a very important passage. And if I had a sincerely seeking Jehovah's Witness, I would take him through this. Problem is, most of the Jehovah's Witnesses are so interested in converting me to their particular viewpoint, which I think is incorrect, that they don't listen, and they're not teachable. But this is what I would teach them if they were open to it. And I'm going to read the passage, Exodus chapter 3, verses 1 through 6, and verse 14. And I want you to notice the references to God in this passage. Now Moses was pasturing the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. Horeb is also Mount Sinai. The angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the midst of the bush. So there's a reference to the angel of the Lord. There are also references that say the angel of God. And when it says the angel of the Lord, that word Lord is a word that our Jehovah's Witnesses friends translate into Jehovah. And so here we have it, the angel of the Lord is appearing from the midst of the bush, and he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, yet the bush was not consumed. Now that's a very dry area, and if any bush catches on fire, it usually goes whoom. After a long winter, we have like 10 bushes of grass. It's maybe 6 feet tall, and the best way to get rid of them, because they're very hard to cut down, is to burn them. And I put a light to them, a match to them, and they just go crackling, and just you got to make sure that it's not very dry when you do it. And but this bush was not burning up, and so it caught his attention. So Moses said, I must turn aside now and see this marvelous sight, why the bush is not burned up. When the Lord saw that he turned aside to look, God, Elohim, called to him from the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses, and he said, Here I am. Then he said, Do not come near here. Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. So they use the word Elohim, they use the word Jehovah, and they use the phrase the angel or messenger of Jehovah. Those are the three. But there's more. He took the shoes off because he was standing on holy ground. Verse 6, he also said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Those three forefathers, and each time it repeated it, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, Elohim, the God of Isaac, Elohim, and the God of Jacob. Then Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. So he was looking at this burning bush, and from the midst of the burning bush, the angel of the Lord was calling him and talking to him, who is also called Elohim and also called Jehovah. And then in verse 14, Moses previously in verse 13 saying, "Who should I say has sent me?" And in verse 14, God said to Moses, "I am who I am." And he said, "Thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, I am has sent you." So the angel of the Lord, Jehovah, the angel of Jehovah, Elohim, the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob, and the I am. All the same. All a reference to the one that's talking from the midst of the burning bush. Now, they might give you an argument on that, but the holes in that are closed as you go to the other passages. Previously, in Genesis 22, there is a reference to this angel of the Lord, which sometimes is called the angel of God. And in verse 11, Abraham is about to kill his son with a knife, kill Isaac, because God has asked him to. But it says, the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, "Abraham, Abraham." And he said, "Here I am." He said, the angel of the Lord said, "Do not stretch out your hand against the lad, and do nothing to him, for now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." So the angel of the Lord is speaking. He isn't saying, the angel of the Lord said, "Thus saith the Lord." No, he's not speaking for God. He's speaking as God. And he said, "Since you have not withheld your only son from me." Verse 12, he said, "Do not stretch out your hand against the lad, and do nothing to him." Well, I just read that, I guess. So Abraham raised his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in a thicket by the horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering in the place of his son. And Abraham called the name of the place, "The Lord will provide," as it is said to this day, "In the mountain of the Lord it will be provided." Then the angel of the Lord called to him, to Abraham, a second time from heaven, and said, "By myself I have sworn, declares the Lord, because you have done this thing, and have not withheld your son, your only son, indeed I will greatly bless you." And so the angel of the Lord, he says, "Do not harm the boy. I see that you fear God, in that you did not withhold the child from me." So the angel of the Lord is talking as if he is God. And he swears by himself, since he cannot swear by anything higher. And then that's in Genesis 22. In Genesis 31, we have the reference going back to verse 11. It says here, "Then the angel of God said to me in the dream, Jacob. And I said, Here I am. He said, Lift up now your eyes and see that all the male goats which are mating are striped, speckled, and mottled. For I have seen all that Laban has been doing to you. I am the God of Bethel." Now, Bethel is where Jacob had this dream. And this dream was the dream of, we call it Jacob's ladder. A ladder, or a staircase, more likely, coming down from heaven to earth, and angels ascending and descending on that. And God is saying, I am the God that appeared to you at Bethel. And it says, the angel of the Lord said this, I am the God that appeared to you at Bethel. So that's very, very interesting. And then the angel of the Lord speaks to Jacob, and he says who he is, and refers back to that Jacob's ladder dream. And then it's the angel of the Lord. So the angel of the Lord claims to be the God that appeared to Jacob at Bethel. And the angel of the Lord is the one who says, now that I see that you fear me, Abraham, and have not withheld your only son from me. And so the angel of the Lord speaks as if he's God. And then Moses has this instance where the angel of the Lord speaks to him from the midst of the bush. And the angel of the Lord is also references Jehovah and Elohim and says, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And then later on, he says, say that I am has sent you. So then there are other places where God appears. And in Judges, and we're going forward after the time of Moses to the time of Judges. And we're looking at Judges chapter 6. So I hope that timeline doesn't confuse you. The burning bush and the angel of the Lord out of the midst of the burning bush is approximately, I'd say 45, there'd be 40 years of wilderness wandering, and then there'd be the conquering of the land. And as they're starting to conquer the land, Moses has been taken up to the Lord, and Joshua is now, we're now into the time of the Judges, past the time of Joshua. So I want to get into the book of Judges. And it starts with a J2, Judges chapter 6. Then the angel of the Lord, verse 11. Then the angel of the Lord came and sat under the oak that was in Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, as his son Gideon was beating out wheat in the winepress in order to save it from the Midianites. Then the angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, the Lord is with you, O valiant warrior. Then Gideon said to him, O my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us? And where are all his miracles which our father told us about? Did not the Lord bring us from Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hand of Midian. The Lord looked at him, the angel of the Lord, and said, Go in this your strength and deliver Israel from the hand of Midian. Have I not sent you? He said to him, O Lord, how shall I deliver Israel? Behold, my family is the least in Manasseh, and I am the youngest in my father's house. But the Lord said to him, Surely I will be with you, and you shall defeat Midian as one man. So Gideon said to him, If now I have found favor in your sight, then show me a sign that it is you who speak with me. Please do not depart from here until I come back to you and bring out my offering and lay it before you. And he said, I will remain until you return. Then Gideon went in and prepared a young goat and unleavened bread from an ephah of flour. He put the meat in a basket and the broth in a pot, and brought them out to him under the oak and presented them. The angel of God, now it uses the angel of God and the angel of the Lord interchangeably, and said, Take the meat and the unleavened bread and lay them on this rock and pour out the broth. And he did so. Then the angel of the Lord put out the end of the staff that was in his hand. So he's a man carrying a staff, and touched the meat and the unleavened bread, and fire sprang up from the rock and consumed the meat and the unleavened bread. Then the angel of the Lord vanished from his sight. So that was the sign. When Gideon saw that he was the angel of the Lord, he said, Alas, O Lord God, for now I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face. I've seen God. The Lord said to him, Peace to you, do not fear, you shall not die. Then Gideon built an altar there to the Lord and named it, The Lord is Peace. To this day it's still in Ophrah of the Abiezrites. So Gideon saw a man who had a staff and did a sign that was called the angel of the Lord in the scriptures. And when finally he realized that he was really talking to God, he thought he would die, and he was reassured, and therefore that he would not die, and he called, The Lord is Peace. So that was once again the angel of the Lord appearing. And very similarly in Judges chapter 13, something very similar happens where the angel of the Lord appears to Samson's parents, and they bring an offering out, and he touches it, and fire comes from it, and he goes up into the fire, up into heaven, and she says, oh no, or the husband Manoah says, oh no, we're going to die. And she said, if he wanted to kill us, he'd have done it. And so they realized that they had seen the angel of the Lord, and they understood him to be God. Now, these are just some of the instances where the angel of the Lord is mentioned in the Bible. I didn't go through all of them. And so the angel of the Lord is speaking from the midst of the burning bush, and he is also called God. He is also called Jehovah. He also claims to be the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac, God of Jacob. And then he says he is also the I am. So this is a very potent passage, and if understood correctly, tells you a lot. There are other theophanies. Epiphanies are revelations, and theophanies is theo and epiphany put together, and so it's a revelation of God. And these theophanies, these revelations of God, where it's clear that a God-man is appearing. And this is not Jesus yet, an identity as Jesus. That's why the second person of Godhead could appear as in the midst of the burning bush, as the angel of the Lord at Jacob's ladder. He could appear also as the captain of the Lord of hosts. But once he became Jesus there and died upon the cross, that's all he appears now as. He could even appear as a rock in the wilderness that gives forth water. But there's a time when Joshua is going to be attacking Jericho. And in the book of Joshua, there is a being that appears before him, and he has a sword drawn, and this is kind of concerning to Joshua, and Joshua approaches him. We find this in Joshua chapter 5 and verse 13. Now it came about when Joshua was by Jericho, that he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, a man was standing opposite him with his sword drawn in his hand. Okay, he had the sword out. That meant that he was a man of business. And behold, a man was standing opposite him with a sword drawn. And Joshua went to him and said to him, Are you for us or for our adversaries? And he said, No, rather I indeed came now as captain of the hosts of the Lord. And Joshua fell on his face to the earth and bowed down and said to him, What has my Lord to say to his servant? The captain of the Lord's host said to Joshua, Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Just like at the burning bush. So the captain of the Lord's host was standing before him, and that is holy ground. So this was another theophany. It wasn't called the angel of the Lord. This time is called the captain of the Lord's host, or the Lord of hosts, you might say in other passages. But there was a theophany there. And then there was another theophany. Like I said, I'm not going to go through every one of them. But the point was, here is a God-man. Here is a person who appears as a man, but he is God. Or you have an angel, the angel of the Lord, that appears before him and speaks to them. And so he's God. Joshua takes his shoes off. The burning bush, he takes his shoes off. And then Abraham, he had three what appeared to be men come by his house, and he went out and he said, Let me entertain you, and let's talk, and I'll get you some food, and you sit under this tree, and I'll feed you, and it would be a blessing to me if we could visit. And then they talked to him, and they're on their way to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, and one of these men is the Lord in man outfitting. And he said, I better tell Abraham. After all, he witnessed to the entire Sodom and Gomorrah villages all at once when he delivered them, and he was hoping that there'd be some real impact, and there's been no impact. These people are so hard-hearted. Abraham did the right thing in witnessing to them, but his hopes were up that it could make a difference. And I'm just telling you about the passage rather than reading the whole thing to you. You can find this in Genesis 18 and verse 2. And so he tells Abraham that he's planning on destroying Sodom and Gomorrah. And he sends the two men on to look at Sodom and Gomorrah to see if they really are as corrupt as they're made out to be by him. And this is more for Abraham's benefit and also to save Lot. And Abraham, it says here in verse 19, chapter 19 of verse 1, Now the two angels came to Sodom in the evening as Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. Now there the two men that left were called angels. But the third one was back still talking with Abraham. And Abraham begins to talk to him and says, Will you destroy all of them for 50 people? No, I won't. If there's 50 righteous, I'll spare the whole cities. How about 40? How about 30? How about 10? And he said, I won't destroy for 10. Well, they couldn't find 10. Matter of fact, the cities were so corrupt and unrighteous, they had to pull Lot and his wife and two daughters out. Even the betrothed men that his two daughters were going to marry wouldn't leave. So there was hardly anybody there that was a true believer. So sad. But he was talking to the Lord. Now, Jesus is also called God with us, or Emmanuel. And that's a prophecy, and it is fulfilled when Jesus takes upon himself flesh, which means God with us. And he's actually born, but he has a pre-existent spirit that comes into him. And now he's going to be yoked as Jesus for the rest of eternity. And he even accepts worship from Thomas when he says, "Come, Thomas, feel the holes in my hand. Thomas, put your hand in your side and be believing." And Thomas, I don't think he even got to that point. He fell down at his feet and said, "My Lord and my God." Now the Jehovah's Witnesses, they might contend that Jesus is Michael the Archangel. And they try to make a case for that. And Jesus isn't Michael the Archangel. They're two different beings. And matter of fact, when Jesus permitted Thomas to worship him, if he had been Michael the Archangel, he'd have become a devil. Because angels are not supposed to receive worship. You have here in Revelation chapter 19, Revelation 19 in verse 10, the Apostle John, who's having this vision, is overwhelmed by the things he's seeing. And then I fell at his feet to worship him. This is an angel. But he said to me, "Do not do that. I am a fellow servant of yours and your brethren who hold the testimony of Jesus. Worship God, for the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy." So the angel would not accept worship. He shouldn't, indeed. And then also you can see a similar statement in Revelation 22 and verse 8 and 9. "I, John, am the one who heard and saw these things, and when I heard and saw, I fell down to worship at the feet of the angel who showed me these things. But he said to me, 'Do not do that. I am a fellow servant of yours and of your brethren the prophets, and of those who heed the words of this book. Worship God.'" So angels are not allowed to receive worship, but Jesus clearly did. And then you have to also understand that the angels in heaven knew who God is. The 24 elders, they knew who God is. And when they worship God, they also worship the Lamb. And so to say that Jesus is Michael the Archangel has to be incorrect. And it says here in Revelation chapter 5 and also verse 8, they were looking for somebody to take the book from the hand of God. And there wasn't anybody to be found in heaven and earth. But I started to cry, John said. And the angel said, "Don't cry, there is one." Verse 8, "When he had taken the book," Jesus, "the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, each one holding a harp and golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. And they sang a new song, saying, 'Worthy are you to take the book and to break its seals, for you were slain and purchased for God with your blood men from every tribe and tongue and people and nation.'" So that's fantastic. It goes on, "You have made them to be a kingdom and priests to our God, and they will reign upon the earth." Then I looked, and I heard the voice of many angels around the throne, and the living creatures, and the elders, and the number of them were myriads of myriads, and thousands of thousands, saying with a loud voice, Worthy is the Lamb that was slain to receive power and riches and wisdom and might and honor and glory and blessing. And every created thing which is in heaven and on earth and under the earth and on the sea and all things in them, I heard saying, To him who sits on the throne and to the Lamb be blessing and honor and glory and dominion forever and ever. Now, if Jesus wasn't God, he would not be allowed to be worshipped. And so he wasn't an angel. He wasn't Michael the archangel. Angels cannot receive worship, but Jesus could, and he is the God with us. So there are many, many proofs, and not only is he the Lamb, but Jesus is the Alpha and the Omega. I can show that to you in Revelation 22 and 13. And also I can show to you in Isaiah chapter 44. This is an important passage, Isaiah 44 and verse 6. Thus says the Lord, the King of Israel and his Redeemer, the Lord of hosts. Remember, the Lord of hosts that appeared before Joshua. I am, thus says the Lord, the King of Israel and his Redeemer. Join them saying this, I am the first and I am the last, and there is no God beside me. Saying I am the first and I am the last is also equal to I am the Alpha and the Omega. So there are proofs so numerous, I could preach 10 Sundays on this. So Jesus appeared, or not Jesus, but the second person of the Godhead, that's how I'll call it, as the angel of the Lord of hosts. Take your shoes off, you're standing on holy ground. It's also called God, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He's called the Lord, and he is called the I Am. And all these passages are being amalgamated to show that Jesus is the eternal one. He didn't suddenly become God. He always was the Alpha and the Omega, saying that jointly with God the Father. So God will appear in many forms in the Old Testament. He can appear as even a rock that gives forth water. And Jesus claims that he is the I Am. And he said, Abraham rejoiced to see my day. And they said, what in the world are you talking about? Now, Abraham, they knew, had lived some 2,000 years ago. And here, this man who is not even 50 years of age appeared to him. How could that be? And I'll tell you, either Jesus is absolutely true, or he's a nut, because he said that he appeared to Abraham. And I say that he is not a nut. He is exactly who he says he is. And in John chapter 8 and verse 56, he says these words, Your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad. So the Jews said to him, You are not yet 50 years old, and have you seen Abraham? Jesus said to them, Truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was born, I am. Well, they wanted to stone him for that statement. So Jesus is claiming that he is the I Am. And there are many times when he uses that statement. He said, Whom do you seek? And they said, We seek Jesus of Nazareth, these Roman soldiers. And he said, I am, and knocked him over by that statement. And he is the great I Am. And this Exodus passage is also used to prove that there is life after death to the pinched, narrow Sadducees. It's an important passage. In Matthew chapter 22, The Sadducees don't believe in life after death. And so they only want to accept the first 5 books of the Bible. They don't want to accept anything else, just Moses' books. They just want that. And so they propose this conundrum. There's a man that had a wife, and she didn't have any children, and he died. So his brother married her, and he died, no children, until there were 7 men that had her as wife in heaven. Ha ha ha. For argument's sake, we'll just say, in heaven, whose wife is she? And Jesus says, well, you are not knowing the scripture. And first of all, here's something you should know, and that is that when people die and they're resurrected, then they become like angels and don't have marriages. But I propose this passage to you, who only want to accept the first 5 books of the Bible, and you think there's nothing in there about resurrection. I'll read it to you. Matthew chapter 22. But Jesus answered and said to them, you are mistaken, not understanding the scriptures, nor the power of God. For in the resurrection they neither marry, nor are given in marriage, but are like angels in heaven. Doesn't mean we become angels, but we are like them in that we're not married. But regarding the resurrection of the dead, have you not read, and he quotes a passage they would accept from the first 5 books of the Bible, what was spoken to you by God? I am the God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. That's what he said in Exodus chapter 3 at the burning bush to Moses. And then he said, he is not the God of the dead, but of the living. So he said, I am presently, present tense, the God of Abraham, and I presently am the God of Isaac, and presently I am the God of Jacob. And they've been dead, some of them 500 years or more. But I am their God. Now, is God the God of the dead or of the living? And he didn't know what to say. But the implication of that is that there has to be resurrection from the dead and life after death, or God couldn't be their God still. They'd be dead. They'd be gone. So it not only means that he is the eternal I am, but that when we die, we are resurrected and have life after death. There's a consciousness after that. And so, my friends, this Exodus chapter 3 passage is a passage that men who want to go into the ministry, and men who want to help, and women who want to help Jehovah's Witnesses, and maybe help their children not get confused by some of the words that are said by other people, and people that claim that Jesus isn't deity, and they're all confused about this theophany. This explains it all. It's just you have to understand it. And somebody has to take the time to point out to all these things and help you understand. I remember when I got a hold of this passage and understood it when I was in seminary, and it was like an explosion in my mind. The great truths of our powerful God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the Elohim, Jehovah, the angel of the Lord, the theophanies, the I am. I hope that you understand it better now.